So the woman has now done what she can to be
Okay.
precautious,
Right.
and yet the result is a pregnancy. So now you have basically said that the society has the right to say that she has to remain pregnant even though she doesn't want to.
Well, first of all, the thing is like I stated before. Number one, uh, we live in a fallen world, and our actions can will determine can well our actions can affect other people. Now, me as a Christian, before I got into my faith, I didn't, I use sex for pleasure. Okay, now sex is not used to stimulate your senses or anything like that. Sex was ordained. Sex is ordained for a man and a woman, a married man and a married woman, to enjoy each other, not to go out and to spread and give their bodies to anyone, to just any person that they feel like that they want to. So when you take a certain act and you pervert it, then you're going to have consequences. So when God sets down a certain law of how we should conduct ourselves, and we say, "Forget you, God, I'm going to do this my way," and then when consequences happen, then we have nobody else to blame but ourselves, because sex is not instituted for people to just go sleeping around with each other. That's why we have so many problems. That's why there's so many STDs and children who are born out of wedlock and all of that type of stuff. Single mothers and single parents and all of that. So
Mm-hmm.
because people choose to push God aside and say, "I'm going to do this my way," but then what happens in the end is that sin leads to another sin when we don't accept God into our lives, when we don't actually follow his commandments. Then we turn around and we try to do what we think is right, and then we create another sin, which will end up to the taking of life.
But there is no scientific demonstration that the fetus at its primary state, when it's just let's say it's just a few days old,
Yeah, like a
it has
zygote.
any of the characteristics as we would identify as a person.
Yeah, it does. It actually does. Um, when you
Okay, what is that?
when you first it's and number one, I'm no doctor or no scholar, but I
Sure.
do, but I do. I have understood what I've read and what I've studied on the subject. When that egg is fertilized, that egg takes on another set of DNA. So that DNA is totally separate from the mother's body. That is not some DNA that is totally 100% the mother's. It is totally 100% of the zygote that is inside of the mother, which is the fertilized egg and the sperm. So it is totally separate from the mother. And
And
science has proven that.
okay, but basically the first primary state of the fetus, let's say just at the beginning of a pregnancy, you
Right?
could actually remove 1/8 of the embryo and continue on with the pregnancy, and the person would in the end become just fine. And you cannot say that for a human being. You could remove 1/8. That's a
You
pretty
can
big part
you can remove 1/8 of what now?
of the embryo. I think it was the embryo. I mean, as you said, I'm not a doctor either. So,
Right.
um,
I mean, to be fair, I've never heard of that. I may have to look into that, but I've never heard of that. Taking 1/8 of the embryo, and removing
sure.
it and taking it outside of the body, and the embryo is still surviving. So I don't know
But
that.
from what we know, at these initial conditions of a pregnancy, the embryo doesn't have a brain. It doesn't have a conscious, and as we go through the pregnancy, those sort of things starts to develop eventually.
Okay.
So in the initial state, there will be no pain. Not even it won't even be conscious. So I don't see how you could say that we take away the rights of the woman who has gotten pregnant because of a rape situation. as we mentioned, in favor of something that is not even conscious.
So, okay, so I got a question. So if there's a person that's inside of a medical facility right now that is
Sorry,
unconscious.
what? Can you say that again?
If there's a person who is inside of a medical facility right now who is unconscious, do we have the right to end that person's life since they have no brain activity and no consciousness at the time?
No. Again,
Why not?
that
It's the same.
person
It's
who
the
is
same thing.
unconscious is not contingent about, is not uh, dependent on the life of the doctor or anything else. That is the main difference. That you're
No,
not
but I'm
taking
saying
away
if they're
anyone
depending
else's
on a machine.
freedoms. Sorry?
Yeah, if they're depending on a machine to keep them breathing,
Yeah.
at the time being, because they are unconscious and they are unable to do so at the time, would it be okay to just say, well, hey, this person is in a coma, they're showing little to no brain activity, and this machine is what's keeping them alive? Should we just be able to go and just pull the plug anytime we want
No.
without? Why not?
No, you obviously not.
Why not?
Uh, the the life of that person is
Hmm.
dependent upon a machine, as you said. It
Right.
is not dependent on the life of another human being and the rights of another human being. So you're not taking away anyone's freedoms in that example.
Well, this taking away my freedoms as a taxpayer who's paying taxes to support that medical facility to stay open, and if there are the more people that are unconscious, it would infringe upon my taxes because now they need to raise taxes in order to care for those people. So that will be infringing upon my right as a taxpayer.
No,
Yeah, it would.
that sure, okay. Taxes are used to be paid for services
Right.
that make people be able to exercise their
All right.
rights.
Okay. So what rights is the mother losing
So
by?
you in
Go
the
ahead.
end get a whole bunch of other people's tax money as well.
Right. So exactly.
I'm assuming you do that at least.
Yeah. No. We. Yeah. I do. I do as well. But at the same time, it's just that I'm trying to get to the bottom of, what is the rights? Like who makes the overall decision to say, um, when a baby should be removed from when should a baby be removed from a mother's womb versus uh, when should a baby not be removed from a mother's womb? So that is one of my that was just one of my questions. But
It
I'll
always
kind of go ahead.
the rights of the baby in the womb always has the same rights as the woman carrying the child.
Right,
And in the issue of abortion, you have two people's rights coming into conflict,
right,
where the woman does not want to remain pregnant. It
right.
does not feel, maybe she doesn't feel like she's ready to have a baby. Maybe she was
Okay,
raped. Maybe I don't know what the circumstances were.
exactly.
Um, but when two people's rights come into conflict, we have to recognize that the difference is that the fetus does not have the right to uh, to take use of the pregnant woman's body,
And who makes that
and that is
decision?
the difference.
Who makes that?
That is the decision that the woman who is pregnant,
All right.
that is the decision she has to make, whether or not
And
she's going to remain pregnant.
so, because I know that you mentioned earlier about what society actually, if society comes together and they say, um, this is what we support, then basically abortion would be okay. Um, but my question to that is society always correct?
About every single law, no. Society is always correct.
Right. Okay. So when it comes to morality, when it comes to objective morality, if society isn't always correct, then how do we know for sure, absolutely, what is right or what is wrong?
That is something that we learn. I mean, we've learned scientifically that the fetus does not have the conscious state and has even yet developed all of the organs, or he's not even alive in the sense that we are.
Right.
Uh, So society has to grant people the rights that they that we know that they are supposed to have. For example, pregnancy is one of those rights. You either remain pregnant or you determine the pregnancy is one of the woman's rights, that she has the right to exercise if she wants to.
Right.
And I don't care. Yeah, you know, you might consider it immoral, but that doesn't make it. I mean, let's say, for example, that you can detect that a person who is pregnant is going to have a baby that is gay. Maybe we could detect that during the pregnancy.
Right.
And
I mean, it'll be impossible, but go ahead.
No, let's say we have that kind of sort of instruments and tools in order to do that.
Right.
As of now, it is impossible, but maybe if that was possible, and the parents decide that they don't want to continue to be pregnant because of this. Now, I would consider that highly immoral. I would consider them to be monsters, basically.
Right.
But I'm not going to take away their rights to do it if they want to. Do you see what I'm saying?
So you would basically say, well, okay, so if it was a Christian family, Christian woman, Christian man, they said, well, you know, we know that our baby's going to be gay, and they decided to have an abortion based on that simple fact, you would be okay with it?
I wouldn't be okay with it. As I said, I would be disgusted with the options based on that single characteristic that they would choose to have an abortion based on that. I would say that is disgusting.
Right. Okay. So
but
basically,
I'm not going to deny them their rights. That is not in my place to say that they cannot do that.
Right. And see, the thing is that me as a Christian, I'm basically in the boat that you're in now. Right now, it is a person's right, and it's a woman's right to go out and have an abortion if she wants to. I believe that it's immoral, and I believe that it is disgusting. But in the end, they'll have to answer to God for that. In the end, but
sure. So maybe God shouldn't allow people who don't want to get pregnant to get pregnant.
Well, number one, people have a freedom of choice. And God is not going to infringe on someone's free will of whether or not they want to be irresponsible with their actions and with their bodies or not. God is not a God who is going to, kind of rain on your parade. If you want to go out and do something, He's not going to stand in the way. He's going to sit back and He's going to let you do what you want to do. That's what type of God that we serve.
Yeah, and I think that is a very, very immoral of him as well.
So
I mean, if I could stop a child rapist from raping a child, I would, and that would be the difference between me and your God.
Well, first of all, God has already revealed to us what is right, what is wrong, and He's already revealed to us who He is through His Word, which we call the Bible. Now, man makes the choice: is if he wants to go out and rape or if he wants to go out and hurt someone else. But that's why there is going to be a place for people who have separated themselves from God versus the people who have held to God. So you better believe that there's going to be a place for people who go out and hurt other people, who actually disobey God's commandments. That place we know it as hell, which is eternal separation from God.
But if I said to a rapist that I'm gonna allow you to rape this woman, but when you're done, I'm gonna punish you, people would think I'm a freaking monster if I did that.
No.
Wouldn't you agree?
No, not at all. Right now, you're allowed. You have total free will to go out and take a knife and go and knife the first person that you see on the street. Yeah, you have allowance. No one is standing over you right now saying that you better not go and do it. You have freedom of choice right now. But you know that if you go out and you do it, then there's going to be consequences, which will probably lead to you being in prison.
Yeah, it is in my best interest to not do that.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I know I have a conscience
exactly,
that tells me that sort of thing is wrong, and that I would not only would I feel incredibly bad, but I would be persecuted for it.
But in the end, according to your worldview, it really doesn't matter because you're just going to die anyway, and it's all going to be over. And if you go out and kill someone, you basically did them a favor because they were going to die anyway. So it's all relative, you know, in the atheist worldview. So it's like you can go out and feed the homeless, or you can go out and kill someone. It doesn't matter because it's all relative. We're
Yeah,
all
and
going to end up
in
in the
your
same place.
worldview, it doesn't
Huh?
matter either, because you can just pray to God and let Him forgive you, and you would all be fine. You
Yeah,
can be. I
well,
mean, this is the problem with the entire Christianity,
okay.
in particular, is where he creates a loophole for you. Basically, we're saying that you don't have to be necessarily accountable for your actions, because you can go ahead and kill 3 people and then pray to God and 10 Hail Marys or whatever, and then you're going to be fine, right?
No, that is not what is
Are,
taught in the Bible.
are you
Um,
saying that a rapist or a murderer can't be saved?
no, a rapist and a murderer can be saved.
Okay, so
Now, if a
then
person,
not necessarily do they have to pay for their consequences, for their actions. They don't necessarily have to pay the consequences, right?
no. Well, the thing is, this is how forgiveness works biblically.
You don't have the option to forgive the person you actually. I mean, why is this in your God's interest to care for us so much? How do you know that God cares for us and loves us? Because I mean, he's capable of deceiving you, isn't he?
No, he's not. No,
He's not. How do you know?
because it says it in the Bible that God, there's no deceit in God.
How do you know that what the Bible says is true about him not being able to lie to you? Maybe he
Because
wrote
it's
that
contrary.
down to
Because
make it sound like that.
it's contrary to the evidence that we have that is
Which is
in the
what?
Bible. I'm sorry.
Which is what?
Well, first of all, number one, we have the 4 Gospels of the witnesses who were there, who
They were
lived,
not eyewitnesses.
who were not eyewitnesses. Which name anyone who wrote the Gospel who was not an eyewitness.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They were not eyewitnesses. We don't have eyewitness testimony
Yeah, we do.
of that.
Yeah, they were eyewitnesses.
They were written down several decades later, as I mentioned, quite early in this discussion.
but just because it was written down several decades later doesn't mean that they weren't there, that they didn't actually see Christ being crucified. There's actually 500 people that actually saw Christ resurrected.
And if they were there, you need to be able to demonstrate that in order to make your case.
Well, and see, that's why I said it goes back to philosophy. What does the other writings outside of the Bible say of the people who were actually there during the time, who saw the events take place after the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? So, but one of the questions that I always ask atheists is that, you know, let's just say hypothetically speaking, let's put the Bible aside. If the Bible is not reliable, and if it's not a reliable source for me to live my life, then what is?
If the Bible is not reliable for what? For you to live your life?
For my morality. Let's say I get all of my morals from the Bible. You're telling me that the Bible is not reliable. You're telling me that Jesus is not reliable. So what can I use in place of the Bible or Christ to know that I am a good person?
You can use the understanding that I am, which is that I base my morality on the fact that I'm sharing this planet with about 7 billion other people. And if we're going to coexist in a healthy and productive way, we need to recognize that there are necessarily consequences to the actions that we take.
Okay, so what about the person who feels like, because number one, you know, I share this reality with you, and I know since the beginning of time, since the beginning of humans have always killed each other and done wrong by each other since the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. So how come murder is still something that is a huge topic in our societies? No matter where you go all over the world, there are people killing other people. And according to atheists, if we are to evolve, how come we haven't evolved from not hurting, not killing, not raping, you know, other people? How come we haven't evolved from that yet? And when are we going to do that?
When, I don't know if and when we're going to do that. we have evolved to learn and set. I mean, we basically legislated to a better society now than we had several centuries ago. I mean, wouldn't you agree that the society is better off now than it was centuries ago?
Not really.
When slavery was an issue, a major issue.
Yeah, slavery was a major issue in the South.
Sure.
But still, there are still prejudices and racial injustices that happen on a very small scale, not on a big scale as
So you wouldn't agree that societal health has improved since then?
No, I don't think so. No. Do you know how many cases of cancer there are here?
No, I'm not talking about cancer. I'm talking about people doing other people harm.
Oh, no.
I'm not talking about natural causes.
No, I don't think so. No, I mean, what we've learned how to do, we've learned how to kill each other quicker and more efficient. You see what I'm saying? Back during, let's say, around the 1800s, you didn't have, the atom bomb. You didn't have, certain things that you can put inside people's food. You didn't have euthanasia or the technology that we have now to go ahead and kill people in masses.
Yeah, and we also didn't have MRIs and
right,
various tools to detect illnesses and
yeah.
So yeah.
But the thing is that, see, when me growing up, in certain areas, certain bad areas, the ghettos and all of that stuff, getting MRIs and all of that stuff, that meant nothing because it was a higher chance of me actually walking out on the street and being shot, than for me to actually get an undetectable disease.
And as of now, if you were shot in today's society, you would have a better chance of being okay than you were centuries ago.
Yeah, but right now I got a better chance of being shot and killed in the streets than actually going out and having cancer. Going to the doctor and having cancer.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't any issues with today's society. Of course there is.
Right.
But we're learning more and more, and we try and do our best to limit the harm that is caused by other people.
Right.
And we work hard to develop new technology that is going to save a whole bunch of lives.
Right. But my question is why? But why go through all of that trouble?
Because we will cease to exist otherwise, and we have a preference to live.
But once
I've said that many times now.
Yeah, but once we die, we're going to cease to exist anyway. So if we die and we cease to exist anyway, then what is the point of trying to make sure that someone else live when they're going to die and cease to exist anyway?
If you weren't a believer in God, if you suddenly became an atheist, do you think that you would kill other people?
My thing is that, first of all, the human mind is capable of very evil things.
Sure.
I don't know what I would be, honestly, if I decided to consciously separate myself from God. That's a question that I really cannot answer. But I can tell you that when I've seen other people separate themselves from God, I've read about and I've seen some of the most, I've just seen some really bad things happen. I've seen some atrocities happen when people decide to push God to the side.
But there are instances where people have been theists and then, in particular, Christians, and then stopped being Christians, and they have not killed anybody since.
Yeah, and there are.
And why don't they do that?
I don't know. I can't answer that question. But there are some people that I know who were atheists who are now theists, and they do have more of a value or appreciation of life because they understand where life comes from and why it's so important. Not just saying, well, it's just important because of, I want to see someone else live, or, I'm hoping that after I die, someone else will live and thrive. So that argument can be made both ways. But what I've seen in the 20th century, which has historically been the bloodiest century so far, has been at the hands of people who have pushed God to the side. We look at guys like John Lennon, Mao Zedong, Joseph Stalin. Even when we go back to the French Revolution, when people decided that they didn't need God in society, I mean, millions of people lost their lives. You know, millions of people lost their lives, and this is, to me, this is what happens when people decide that we don't need God in society, and when everything becomes relative.
Yeah,
This
and
is what.
and it doesn't seem to, you know, in studies of societal health,
Uh-huh.
it is a strong correlation between the more religious the society, the lesser off they are on these studies, from everything to STDs to teenage pregnancies to rape, anything you like. So the more secular the society, the better off. In fact, that's what a lot of studies is pointing to as of now.
Well, I mean, I would, I would.
I mean,
First of
we
all,
don't have a whole bunch of problems about ghettos and stuff like that,
right.
and other problems over in the States. We don't have here in Sweden, for example, or in Japan, or in Denmark, or in Norway.
Right.
I mean, there are in many ways that our society has benefited from being secular, and
Well, but it's also, but I've also done some studies on Sweden too. That, and I don't know how it is now, but
Mhm.
I know that there was a report that went out that Sweden is actually considered the rape capital of the world. Um,
Yeah, I know,
and it's like,
and
what is it?
that is
Yeah.
accurate in with respect to that. We have recently harshened the laws, and we have probably um, uh, I'm gonna need to look up this word.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give me 1 second.
No, go ahead.
We have probably the harshest laws against rape.
Right.
So what we define as rape is, it's a very broad definition, and it's not being used in that same regard in other countries. And so as soon as we redefine the word rape, there was a whole bunch of more occasions where rape situations had been reported.
Right. And I also read a report that whenever a woman is actually assaulted in Sweden, there is kind of like this mindset that, well, maybe she did something to provoke it. Um, and I know that some people actually feel that way, that a woman, well, you know, if you wasn't, you know, maybe if you weren't a woman walking in a certain area, you know, you wouldn't have gotten raped. And I can't remember. There's a guy who lives in Sweden, um, and he does videos. He does YouTube videos. I can't remember his name, but he's from Bosnia. He came from Bosnia about probably about 20, 30 years ago, and he's been living in Sweden ever since. And
Okay.
he was talking about the issues that were going on in Sweden, and how a lot of people, how you're not allowed to speak out against society in Sweden, or they would kind of mock you or scoff at you, or kind of uh, socially outcast you.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's partially correct. I
Right.
mean, there is this. We've grown very aware of the importance of political correctness,
Right.
and people who aren't is in a sense outcasted. Yes. I mean, what was your question?
Well, basically, my point is that, you know, when you say that a secular society is basically more ideal than a religious society. Now, I do agree with you that religious societies are not always the best.
Hmm.
Because number one, like I said, going back to my original statement, you know, we live in a fallen world. So even if people all decided to convert to Christianity, things will probably be good for a little while, but it'll eventually be back to where it is. And this is the reason why um, God sent down His Son, Jesus Christ, to save us from our sins. Um, so therefore, sin and all of these evil things would be dealt with, at one fell swoop. But I don't. But the thing is that I understand life, and I understand the importance of life, because I know that we were made in the image of God, and that is the reason why we have a conscience. That's the reason why we're able to decide what is right and what is wrong. And I don't think that society can determine what is right and wrong. Never has, never will. I mean, society has tried, but there's
And
always going to
yet,
be
and
somebody who's
yet,
going to lose.
sure, and yet, I've lived my life, and I know the importance of life, and with respect to others as well. And I've
Right.
come to these conclusions without the use of a God.
Well, the thing is
So,
that, go ahead.
would you agree at least that that I have moral positions that are moral?